Hello, today we've got Sue Barrow with us, author and history, fiction,
Yes.
non-fiction. You've done it all, really,
Yeah.
haven't you? So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I live in Cardiff and I've got a family living locally as well. And so we see lots of our grandchildren but my main sort of, hobby it was really, and I suppose it's still an interest. It doesn't provide me with an income, but I've always loved writing ever since I was a child, I would say. I've been a childhood scribbler. I was always had a little notebook on hand and just writing ideas down for stories. But I didn't really have a chance to start doing things with a more serious, getting published in mind until my youngest daughter went to school, and by then I was in my late 40s, and I had an idea for a story, and I managed to. After quite a long time, get it all together, find a publisher, get it published. And I've just gone on from there, really, having some, as you say, some non-fiction books on local history of Cardiff and the Welsh Valleys published, and then more recently, the book that I think I'm most pleased with, which is about a girl who is trafficked from her home in Albania to the UK on the promise of a better life, only to discover when she arrives that she's to be effectively a slave in her cousin's home, caring for small children, cooking and cleaning, and not being allowed to go to school or make friends or anything like that. So that story really is rings very true for a lot of young women who find themselves in that situation, in situations of domestic slavery. And I've been very exciting about the publicity that book has had. The sales aren't brilliant,
Yeah.
but I've certainly had a review in the Guardian, and also was included in the Empathy Lab list for last year.
Yeah.
Writing really about a subject that puts young people in a position, I think, of understanding better what
Yeah,
things like trafficking are
absolutely.
about,
Yeah.
and inspiring empathy, hopefully, in many of the readers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it really is a powerful story, and like you say, you were invited as part of the Read for Empathy collection. So, I mean, tell us how that came about. Did it get selected, or did you send a draft to them? How did that work?
Well, I was published by a small press called Cadence, who's based in Bournemouth.
Mhm.
And when I was in touch with their director, I very much had the feeling that my book was something that they very much wanted to publish.
Yeah.
They got a strong moral compass, that the publisher, and were really keen to promote a book that was there to raise awareness about trafficking.
Yeah.
And as I say, Sophie, my editor and publisher, has been very keen on promoting, but obviously with a small budget, with a small publisher.
Yeah.
But she was very much on the lookout for opportunities to highlight the fact that I'd written a book that would, could have an impact on
Yeah,
the way people
definitely.
thought. And she had heard of the, no, actually, it was me. Yes, I'd heard of the empathy list quite by accident one day when I was just doing some reading online, and I mentioned it to her. So she contacted them, and they very quickly asked for a copy of the book. It's a little bit like the other children's awards. They have several rounds of looking at books
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then narrowing them down to obviously a smaller number. I think it's about 50 books
Mm.
they include on their list. Some are children's and some are a smaller number for young adults. And that was how it all came about, really. So people from the Empathy Lab read my book. It obviously got through the first couple of rounds, and then to my absolute delight, in I think it was November 23, probably,
Yeah.
I heard that I'd been accepted. My book sold had been accepted for inclusion on their list, and I was absolutely thrilled. In a way, I think I thought, well, I knew my book was fairly unique in the sense that there wasn't another book about domestic
Absolutely.
slavery.
Yeah.
So I thought I was in quite a strong position. I suppose it was just a question of whether they thought the book was well enough written, because you could
Mm,
still have a concern about domestic slavery, but maybe not write it very well. But
mm.
they were obviously very pleased with the way the book was written, and they took it for their list. So
That's
that was
fantastic.
that was a huge boost for me.
Absolutely. I mean, your debut novel, Keeping Secrets, that too highlighted, something that a reader may well be in a situation themselves, like being
Mm,
adopted. So,
yes,
I mean,
yeah.
does it, do you feel that that's what you lean more to, is more everyday things that are happening that or could
Mm,
happen to children that
yeah,
you feel you
yes.
want to write about?
Definitely, yes. I very much like writing what I would call issue books,
Mm,
issues that young people are going through. I mean, there are so many now, but
yeah.
I really felt I'd had it in me to write a book about adoption. I just had a very strong feeling about that when I started writing. I mean, I in my as I said, when my youngest went to school, I did an online course. I don't know whether you, you remember correspondence courses
Yeah.
before. So it wasn't an online course. It was wrong to say that because there weren't computers then. We're going back to the sort of the late 90s,
Yeah.
and yeah, mid to late 90s. And I signed up with an organization called the Writers Bureau,
Oh, I
and
remember Writers
they,
Bureau. Yeah,
yes, yeah.
yeah.
And it was just that they said, well, write, as an assignment, write a chapter of a book that you would like to, you'd like to write about. And I'd had this idea floating around in my head for a long time. I'd done lots of research, reading lots of books about adoption,
Mm.
and I just had a slightly different idea, I thought, and I just felt I wanted to set it in the Welsh Valleys, and that worked well for me because when it came to finding a publisher, they wanted a book that was set in Wales but written in English, which was
Yeah.
great. So, and I felt that there were so many stories that you can tell about adoption. There's so many viewpoints. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just the viewpoint of the child who's been adopted, which I
Yeah.
actually wrote about, but you've got the viewpoint of the adoptive parents, you've got the viewpoint of the birth mother,
Yeah.
you've got the viewpoint of siblings, perhaps, who
Absolutely.
welcome an adopted child into their family, and I just felt, yes, that's a book I want to write. And in fact, when it came out, then I had a few friends who said, well, look, I'm adopted, and it really rang true for them. Some
Yeah.
of the questions I had my main character Kerry asking herself. So that was great. That was back in 2006.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yes,
still
and
incredibly relevant even today,
yeah,
for
I
readers.
think it
So
is. I mean, yes, it's a book I'm still pleased with. But
yeah.
you're right, I do love writing about issues. So when I had written my local history books, which
Mm.
followed Keeping Secrets, I was reading. Do you want me to just tell you a little bit about that?
Yeah,
How I
yeah,
came to write
absolutely.
that
Please
book?
do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So I came upon a newspaper. I think I'd heard about child trafficking through my church, and one day I just picked up a newspaper. I can't even remember where I was, but a proper newspaper now, a broadsheet.
yeah,
And I opened it, and on the third page three, there was a picture of a couple hiding their faces from the camera. So the woman had a scarf, covering her nose, and the man had his fingers splayed over his face. And it turned out that they were a professional couple living in London, and they had arranged for a member of their extended family to come over to this country on the pretext of, giving her a better life, really,
yeah,
because she came from a very poor part of Nigeria.
mm,
And so she came, and of course, she arrived. Things were just not going to be as had
mm,
been promised to her. And after 5 years, she had managed to tell somebody in the local library, and then things started rolling, and
yeah,
she was freed, and they were tried, and they had pretty stiff sentences. But as soon as I've read that, I thought, oh, this is my next book. This is what I want to write about.
yeah, yeah,
And so I set about just doing lots and lots of research. So yes, I think teenagers particularly are just so interesting because they are at the stage where they're making up their own minds about what they believe, about
yeah,
who they think they are.
yeah,
And that's why I love writing for teens, because they do the craziest things,
yeah,
that you wouldn't necessarily get in an adult book.
yeah,
And all the time you can hear your readers screaming, no, don't, don't make that decision, don't go down that road,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then somehow or other you get them out of that. And I just find it very satisfying writing stories from a teenage viewpoint.
Yeah. And obviously you take a workshop into schools, and obviously you're part of the Blandford Literary Festival schools program for this year. Um, so when you do your workshop, how do you, or do you portray empathy within your characters? How do you get the students to sort of understand that and maybe write in that way?
Well, I think I really try to. I think I talk about my characters.
Mm.
And I mean, I quite honestly, I just think you'd have to be hard as nails, wouldn't you, not to find
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
story like this, one of, where young people would feel compassion and feel, my goodness, that,
Mm.
that could be me if I'd been
Yeah.
born in a different part of the world. So I think, you're right. You have to have characters that your young people reading your story, or your adults, or whoever is reading, that they feel this sense of injustice and a wrong
Mm.
needing to be put right. And my workshop's very interactive. I start off with a very short film, a government film actually, talking about what modern slavery is,
Mm.
and then I lead then into just talking about, well, how do they react to that? Was that what they thought, child trafficking was, and how do they feel about that? Do they think that that's something we should be concerned about?
Yeah.
And I usually do a quiz, trying to really get them think about, well, what do they actually know about this?
Yeah.
And again, it's very interactive, it's lots of fun. I usually throw lots of sweets out, and that that
Yeah.
sort of thing, to just generate interest. And then we talk about the answers, and then I usually read from my book, and I'm explaining to them, about what's happened, without giving too much away, in the hope
Yeah.
that they might want to buy the book eventually. Yeah, and I think, you can then provide, depending on how much time you've got, is to provide opportunities, perhaps then, for young people to picture themselves in a scenario, and how they might portray a
Yeah.
character like that
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said earlier, teenagers are going through so many things. There's so many issues that they
Mm.
face daily. So I'd imagine it's quite well received as well from teenagers.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Mm.
Yes, I think most of them now. I mean, I've been doing school workshops for a couple of years with my book, and uh, well, I say to them, I describe a situation, in my story, without using the words modern slavery or human trafficking, and
Yeah.
so, well, can anybody tell me what do you think this book is about? And there's usually a very good number will say, well, this is trafficking you're writing about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they, yes, and I think, I think that as well about my own children. My gosh, we could have been living in Albania, or
Yeah.
other countries where poverty is endemic, and corruption,
Mm.
and the government really doesn't make much of an effort,
Yeah.
to do much about trying to catch traffickers.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think, it certainly is a subject which does evoke a lot of empathy.
Yeah, no, absolutely, definitely. I mean, like I said earlier, a very powerful story. Now, obviously, your non-fiction, you did a history degree, didn't you?
Yeah.
Is that, did that help you to say, well, I enjoy writing, I love history, shall I
Mm,
do some non-fiction? Is that, I know it
mm.
came, that they came between the two books, didn't they? So tell
Yes,
us a
yeah.
little bit about that.
Well, yeah, you've actually pretty much summed it up there now. It's actually, I have always loved history.
Mm.
So I was up in London. I did a University of London degree, and I've just never lost my love for history.
Mm.
And I think what I particularly loved was that I went on a school trip as a parent with my youngest daughter,
Mm.
back in or probably, yes, that would have been the 1990s, and we were walking around Cardiff, which is a really a city that's just got a lot of interesting history about it. I mean, Cardiff Castle, built by the
Yeah,
Romans to
yeah.
start off with. So, and as we were walking around, and the teacher was pointing out various things, a place where somebody was burned at the stake, in Tudor times, and I just thought to myself, oh, I would just love to write a book for children about the history of Cardiff.
Yeah.
and I can't remember how many years that was, but it wasn't that long. And after I'd had my first book published, the one advantage, even though my book didn't sell very well, was the one advantage was that I was now allowed to enter into these hallowed circles
Yeah.
of real writers, you know, people who had been, like me now, traditionally published,
Yeah.
not people who were self-published. That wasn't so much a thing then. And as a result of that, my name was on an email listing, which was available to publishers who were looking for writers, you know,
Yeah.
to give them a, you know, a commission. And so one day an email just popped up in my inbox, and they didn't know I had a history degree, but they just said, "We know you're a writer of children's fiction, and we know you're living in Cardiff, and we wondered whether you would be interested in writing about the local history of Cardiff for a new series that we are starting." So and they said, you know, they said, "We'll pay you." You know, I've never been paid anything for my writing. Well, I had a small advance with keeping secrets, but not much. And so, of course, I said, "Oh, I would be absolutely delighted to."
Mm.
And I started doing some research straight away. And a couple of days later, this really made me laugh. I mean, it only make you laugh if you know Cardiff and its proximity to the Welsh valleys. But they said, "Oh, the Welsh valleys, are they anywhere near Cardiff?" Well, I don't know whether you know, but
Yeah, I
actually, you
do.
know, I live
Uh,
on sort of on the doorstep of the Welsh valleys, really,
yeah.
where I live in North Cardiff. And I said, "Yeah, they're pretty close, really." So they said, "Well, in that case, would you like to do the Welsh Valleys book as well?" And I said yes. I didn't have to think about that. And then they told me, and this was a real shock to me. They said, "Well, we want the two books written in 12 weeks.
Wow.
You've got 6 weeks to do one and 6 weeks to do the other." And the thing is, when you're writing fiction, you're not agented. You know, you can pretty much pick up your writing when you feel like it and
Yeah.
put it down. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't really interfere much with your social life. But this idea that I suddenly had to, you know, just really get myself into gear and spend most of my time just writing these books was was something else. But you know, I really appreciated the discipline and what I
Yeah.
learned from that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, they wanted. I mean, I could show you the books, but I've got them here. But it
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
not
Absolutely.
suitable for the
Please
interview.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll just show you one quickly. The history of Cardiff. So with the beautiful Cardiff Castle. So there we are. So this is a spread that they would call rich
Wow.
and poor. So you can see there's lots of narrative, but
Yeah.
there's also lots of beautiful drawings and cartoons and little challenges for the kids. There's a picture of the Marquis of Bute who oversaw the reconstruction and the refurbishment of Cardiff Castle back in the middle of the 19th century, and so I had to learn to write, you know, really tightly. So I can
Yeah.
remember sending my first contribution for whatever spread it was, probably the Roman times, and she said to me, "Well, that's great, Sue, but you know, actually, you're going to have to reduce that by a third
Oh my
because otherwise,
God.
it's not going to fit in the book." So, so instead of writing 90 words, you know, they wanted 30.
Yeah.
So that was a real skill. You remember we did précis at school, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so I really had to you know, bring those skills to bear. And it was just such an exciting project to work on. I
Yeah.
loved it, and I
Yeah.
had an opportunity to influence what was included. So
Yeah.
I thought up the idea of having a section in it where you would write something about what life was like for young people
Mm.
in that particular time that they were living. So I wrote about a stable boy who was terrified that the English lords were going to come and tear down the castle that his boss, effectively Gilbert de Clare, was building.
Yeah.
And then I had a great time because a friend of mine, her grandmother, her mother, had worked in Cardiff Castle as a kitchen maid,
Uh-huh.
and she had kept a diary. And this
Oh,
friend was willing
wow.
to loan me her diary so I could actually write a sort of an imaginary letter home that
Yeah.
this young girl might have written her parents, telling them, you know, what her life was like as a kitchen maid. And I had all the information there, you know, to tell me. So that's something I usually read that
Fantastic.
out when I do, you know, when I do talks, because
Yeah.
it's a particularly nice story, that one, you know, to be able to say, well, this is actually accurate. This isn't me thinking. This is what a kitchen maid
Yeah.
did. So yes, that was how the opportunity came to write the books, and I wrote them, and then they came out in August 2010.
Yeah.
And the great thing is they're probably, and I haven't earned masses of money, but I have more money from those because of the library loans,
Yeah.
because they're in most of the libraries in South
Well,
Wales and also in the schools.
I'm gonna tell you now, I used to be a librarian. in an
Oh,
independent
yes.
school up in the Midlands, and I had the whole
Yes.
set that they did.
Yeah.
This project that you've obviously written for,
Yeah. The
like you
hometown
said,
histories.
it was lots of cities around the country. So I
Yes.
bought all of them for the library because I thought they were
Oh,
really
right.
well written. I
Yes.
thought the
Yeah.
little tasks inside were brilliant, and I
Yes.
just
That's
felt
right.
they're perfect. So when I
Yes.
saw your name, when you think, I know this name. Now I'd heard your about your book called Sold. I'd already seen something
Yeah.
about that before we knew that the Blandford Literary Festival were lucky enough to get you. But then
Oh,
when I
okay.
actually saw the history books, I was like,
Yes.
I know those books. And it's the set that I bought for the library. So there we
Oh
go.
gosh, so you bought mine, even though it was for the Midlands.
I did, I bought all of them because it was an
Yeah.
independent school, we had children from all over the country.
Oh, I
So
see.
I thought,
Right.
let's
Yeah.
have the whole set because they were just so
Fantastic.
good. I just thought they were so good,
Yes.
So
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
well, that's lovely to hear that, Nat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So well
No,
done
I'm
you.
really thrilled with those books. I mean, it's funny because my daughter, my youngest daughter, became a teacher,
Mm.
and she was in a school doing some work, and she had to go and see somebody, and said, "Look, I've got to teach something on Philly Castle tomorrow." And of course, this woman ended up saying, "Oh, there's a great book in the library." Well, you can guess whose it was, and she had just ended up saying, "Oh, my mum wrote that." So, yeah. So, but it has been used hugely in schools and libraries, and
Yeah.
I'm just so
Do,
pleased,
do you know why
because
I think it was successful? I think the children loved them where I work because they are bite-sized bits of information that
yeah,
they can, when
yeah,
they're doing a project, or if they because they regularly used to say to the children, right, go and find some facts on, and then they'd give them something
yeah,
to go and find facts on. So your
yes,
books, were fabulous. The whole series
yeah,
was fabulous because it was bite-sized information that the children can
mm,
absorb and then
yeah,
almost regurgitate when they get back to the classroom and write about. So,
yes, yeah,
that's
yeah,
what I liked about them. I thought they were fabulous.
mm,
Have you thought of
yeah,
doing
yeah.
anything else along that line, seeing
Oh,
that
well, I
they
would
were a
love
success?
Yeah, I would love to, but I think it's one of those things, you kind of waiting for somebody to ask you to do that.
Yeah,
There did seem to be the possibility of writing a book on Wales,
yeah.
but that never came to anything. And I wonder whether they were suffering financially. I don't know because
Mm.
they're no longer in print. I
Oh,
mean, they're
yeah,
available, lots of
yeah,
secondhand copies, but they're not being printed anymore. And that seemed to disappear, within a year or two. So,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, they move on, I think, to other projects,
yeah,
and they were great to work with. I had a lovely editor in
yeah.
Hometown Histories. Really enjoyed working with her. But as I say, I think non-fiction books generally. I mean, I have pitched for one or two, and just never heard anything.
No,
So
no.
yeah,
Oh, now going back to fiction, then obviously, the success of Sold, with regards to the powerful story. What's next for you? Have you got something in the works or in the pipeline at the moment?
yes, I have actually. Yes, yeah. So you've read Soul then, Nat,
I know
by the
about the
sound of it.
story. I think
Right.
I must
Okay.
have read it was in the Guardian, you said, wasn't it? Because I know
Yes,
I'd
that's
seen
right.
it before I knew that we had you. So,
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
you probably won't know that there's a lovely boy that she meets,
Mm,
and he really is very kind to her and helps her. And although they part for a while, she realizes that he's trying to rescue her when she's trapped. And what I decided to do in my last job, I used to work in HR and then human resources, and then in my final years before I retired, I worked on a project which was providing information to people who are what they call kinship carers, family carers, so
yeah,
young carers in particular. So where perhaps a mum or a dad has had a stroke, and the family breaks up, and there's maybe a son or a daughter then who's actually looking after mum or dad.
yeah,
And I found out a lot about that and had a contact with a lot of young carers in my final job. And I really felt I wanted to write a book about young carers, about a
yeah,
young carer, and again a novel. So in my book, The End of Sold, Jason, this boy who really is just so wonderful with Rosa, he has a mum who had a stroke early on because of tragedy in their family, and he feels very guilty that he hasn't really been able to help her.
mm,
And so I decided I would write a story using him as the main character.
yeah,
in the book. And writing it about somebody who is a carer. But the trouble was, I found it quite difficult to make it, what I would call a page turner, something
Yeah.
again that was going to be a bit like Soul, something you just wouldn't put down. And the story I was going to have running by it was, so it was going to be like a two viewpoint story. So a girl whose name is Essie, and she and her brother were orphans, and they've been brought up by like the wicked uncle, and he's a
Mm.
criminal, and so he's been grooming the young brother for crime, and Essie really sees it as her job to rescue him from all this. So they're involved in a crime. She meets this guy Jason and offers to be his mother's carer, but what he doesn't know is that she's been involved in a very serious crime, as a result of her uncle, and that she is, if the police got to hear about it, then she would be in very deep water. But she's
Yeah.
so it's Jason and Essie, and I realised in the end that the Essie side of the story was really dominating the
Mm.
whole story rather than Jason and his mum. So
Yeah.
his story is still in there. It is a dual viewpoint story, but it really is Essie's scenario, Essie's problem, that is really dominating. And when I realised that, I thought, yes, I've just got to go with that.
Yeah.
But she's still got this wonderful friend, Jason, who has no longer got anything to do with the girl. He
Yeah.
helped to rescue from modern slavery. But yeah, so it's a story I'm really enjoying writing.
That's
It's
lovely.
it's quite challenging
Yeah.
to write two viewpoints as well. And I've got to put a word in here for a great organisation called the Golden Egg Academy. I don't
Right.
know whether you've heard of that, but I did a course with them about 6 years ago, and really transformed my writing and the way I think about my writing. And
Yeah.
they were extremely helpful when I was writing Sold. So I'm actually going on a training, like a training course, to learn a little bit more and to have a chance to chat with some editors there about, how I can make my book the best that it can be.
Mm. That's
So
fantastic. That is
yeah,
fantastic.
so
And
so it's another
also,
issue book,
it
it's
is,
another
and
issue book.
another one that
Yeah.
is very, very relevant and current for children within schools now.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Over my time of working in education, I've come across quite a few children who were carers, either for
Mm,
parents or for their siblings.
yeah.
So yeah, it's quite an isolating feeling for them. So I think to
Yes.
have a
Yeah.
book that either young carers will read themselves or people who maybe have never cared for anybody can that
Mm,
empathy coming back in.
yes.
So I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
sounds absolutely brilliant. That's just
Yes.
fantastic. I will have to get you back on to talk about that when it's all
Oh,
ready,
thank you. Yeah.
published,
Yeah. I would
and
love to.
we'll get you back for that because that would be
Thank you.
fantastic. Well, we're nearly out of time now, Sue,
Oh,
and there are
okay.
just so many things that I would love to talk to you about. But like I say, we'll get you back. And you're obviously part of the Blandford Literary Festival Schools
Yes,
program.
I'm
We're
really
incredibly
looking forward
honoured
to
to
that.
have you, and
Oh, well,
that's
thank
that's
you.
coming up. What, nearly 2 weeks' time? So on the
Yes, yeah,
Friday,
yeah,
which
yes.
would be great. So obviously people can watch this, and if they want to find out any more about you, do you have your website? Don't you? Which is it
Yes, it's suebarrow.com. So
suebarrow.com?
www.suebarrow.com. Yes,
Fantastic.
I think
And
that's
and
it.
so that's they can find out more about you and your books on there, can't
Yeah.
they?
Yes,
And
yes.
obviously if anybody is watching this that is maybe from a school that would like
Mhm.
you to talk, they can contact you via your website as well, can't they?
Yes, yeah. And I've also got a Facebook page, Sue Barrow
Lovely.
Children's or a children's author. So
Fantastic.
yes, that's that's I tend to have put more stuff on there than I have
Yeah.
on my website. Keeping these things up to
I
date
know,
is
absolutely. And
um,
and Facebook is so instant, but yeah, it
yes,
just means
that's
that if
right.
anyone wants to contact you, because these issues that you're writing about are so important, and I think the more
Yes,
children that get to experience your workshop, and just to even just just drop those ideas into their heads, so that it gives them something to think about, and to have an
yeah,
opinion on as well. So it's
yes, that's
important.
right. Yeah,
It really is.
yes.
So Sue, thank you so much, and
Well, thank you very much,
I
Naz.
will see you in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, I'm so looking forward to this. It's been the highlight in my diary for a while.
Oh,
So
fabulous,
and
fabulous.
I'm looking forward to meeting other writers there as well. And
Definitely,
yes, it's
definitely.
going to be great. Thank you
Fantastic.
so
All right
much
then,
for
Sue. See you soon.
okay. Yes,
Bye.
thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.